Hey guys, Jeff here. I just saw a very intense but also very good movie called Prisoners. If you have kind of a soft stomach or you don't really like movies that are very real and kind of have that dark tone to them, then be careful. But something that was really interesting in there that I wanted to chat about that reminded me of this video I was going to make is about midway through the movie, and this is not a spoiler, by the way, you could deduce this probably from the previews, but as you saw from the previews, his daughter gets taken, and then so then he goes and gets the guy who he thinks takes his daughter, and he's going to torture him, and then he's in the hallway before he starts torturing him, talking to his friend who also had his daughter taken, and he's pleading with him saying, hey, he's another human being, don't do this, or something to that effect. And Hugh Jackman says something really interesting. He looks back at him and he says, he stopped being a human being the minute he took my daughter, and then he goes in and tortures the guy. And why I thought that was so telling and so interesting is it reminded me of the chapter in my book, Jesus is Greater Than Religion, chapter 4, Religion Makes Enemies, Jesus Makes Friends. And what's telling about that, and what's also talked about in the chapter, is that notice he has to dehumanize before he can oppress. Right? All oppression, all violence, honestly, almost, and certainly all evil is always predicated by dehumanization. You can think of this on a large scale, very famous scale. I mean, think about Nazi Germany. Hitler's on record talking about Jews being subhuman or not fully human or not pure in that Aryan way like he talks about, which was just grossly evil. You can think about Jim Crow or slavery times when blacks were only afforded 3/5 of a vote, almost saying they're only 3/5 human, right? And then atrocity and evil. But what I'm saying with that is oppression, violence, and evil is always predicated by dehumanization. You have to lower that person first before you oppress them. You have to say they're not human, they're not good enough, they're not worthy, they're not on my level. And what's interesting about that, and why I wanted to talk about that, is that principle carries over into religion. Religion can be the same thing. Religion becomes oppressive, and false religion, a distorted religion, gross religion, becomes oppressive the minute we start dehumanizing and also demonizing, which is very similar, to the other side, right? I mean, you look at when Jesus came, you can see Israel did this with sinners, right? The Jews did this with anyone who maybe wasn't living up to the Old Testament code that they were called to live up to. They were certainly doing this with people like tax collectors who had various things that were not the best actions. They also did it to Roman people. They thought Rome as a political empire was their enemy, and so then they would oppress, or at least they would see them as utterly evil, the people, not the system behind them, but the people, right? And so we have to think about that with oppression. Today, it's I mean, you can think of political parties do that all the time, right? If you're a Republican, a lot of Republicans, when they make an idol out of politics, demonize, right, Democrats. And then a lot of Democrats, when they make an idol out of politics, demonize Republicans. It's not like, oh, we disagree, let's have a talk. It's, oh, you are the essence of the problem, you are evil, and we kind of demonize them and say if only they were all gone, then the world would be a better place. And that's evil, that is wrong, that is oppressive, right? And when you look at the times of Jesus, what's really unique about him is that religion, again, kind of boxes itself off. It becomes oppressive when, rather than trying to be the light of the world and knowing that they were given grace to go give grace, it shuts themselves off and says, oh, don't associate with sinners, don't associate with these people, they're evil, we need to just stay in our box. But Christianity, when it's flourishing and it's doing great, rather than trying to put a barrier around us, it's actually realizing, hey, we're all the same, they're not the enemy, my heart's the enemy, my sin is the enemy, and I've been given grace, so I need to give grace to them. And so that's the essence of chapter 4 in my book, is that we are the problem, our hearts are the problem, we're all in this huge thing called humanity, and God is giving us grace, and when he gives us grace, we in turn need to flip that around and give grace to others. Notice in the scriptures when Jesus comes, this juxtaposition of the religious people, the oppressive people, would lower people down at their benefit. They would lift themselves up at the expense of others, right? And then think about Jesus, who he would actually lower himself at the benefit of others. He would lower himself at the expense of himself. He would wash people's feet. He would bring dignity and worth to everything and anyone he saw. Is that us? Is that how we are seen in the world? What if Christians were seen in the world as people who everything we touch and anyone we talk to, we bring value and dignity and worth because we believe in the principle of the image of God, and our value is from him, not anything we do. And I'm even reminded of how brutal that can be in the internet culture. I mean, think of the internet culture, how much it can dehumanize us. That person's not a real person. They're just an avatar. They're just a Facebook picture. They're just a Twitter picture. Louis C.K., who's a comedian, has a very interesting skit, who's also talked about the fact that it's different nowadays with the internet when we make fun of people or when we critique them or when we say bad things about them, because back in the day when you did that in person, when there was no internet, you had to see what it did to them. You had to see the response. You had to see how you hurt them. But now when you type it, you don't see the response. You don't see that. Again, it bends back in on itself, and we then say things we probably never would have said in person. So let us be people who have a reconciliation element to everything we do. Like Jesus, he made friends, he had dinner with all these people, he reached out, he brought worth, he brought dignity, and he brought value because he believed that we are all in the image of God, and this world would be a better place if we're all under grace brought into full humanity. And so that's what I got for you today. That's chapter 4, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Love you guys.